guys so much. I am Brandon, and I'm one of the worship leaders here. We are so thankful you chose to spend your morning with us this morning. We are so excited. The first thing we want to talk about is the hub. I know we hit it hard every week, but it's super important. It's the main thing we have here at C3. It's where you can find out any information you need to know. If you're new, you can go click the I'm New button. We'll send you a free gift just to say thanks for being here with us. We also have a new button. It's a mental health button. If you guys need help with that, you can click that there as well. It goes along with our message series. The next thing we want to talk about is our Thanksgiving basket giveaway. That is going to be Saturday, November 18th. And if you want to volunteer, feel free to come here. We're going to meet here around 9 a.m. And we'll disperse from there. The next thing we have to talk about is the hub. This is the C3 Epic Life app. You can get it from the hub. You can scan this QR code. It'll download it there as well. We finished up that series a couple weeks ago. We're super, super excited about that still. If you guys want to check that out, it's a great asset for your daily walk. I think that's all we have this morning. If you guys want to stand up, we'll sing a couple more songs.
God like you, a love so true.
so much for letting us come together and, Lord, more about you and just be in fellowship with one another. Lord, I pray that we would remember how great your love is, that you would send your only Son to die on that cross for the forgiveness of our sins, Lord. Help us to remember that this morning.
So Rise and shine. Get dressed. Check your phone. Scrolling, okay? Stop scrolling. Hit the gym. What time is it? Skip the gym. Out the door. Grab some Java. Miss breakfast? Grab a pastry and smash it. Smashing it. Out the door with your $6 Kappa Mocha Latte. In the door. Say hi to Jim. Hi, Jim. Meetings. That's how we do it. Read the emails. Reply all. Per my last email, no. Delete. Check the gram. Scrolling. Take a selfie. Post a selfie. No likes. Self-esteem in the toilet. How about Twitter? I can't believe he said that. Or that. Okay, that I can't believe. Is it lunch yet? Deadlines, headlines. Mondays are the worst. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, but you're not there. The grind continues. More emails, more scrolling, more projects, and done. Clock out. Head home. Veg out. What's for dinner? Take out. Again. Eat, sleep, do it all over again. I gotta ask. You good?
All right, well, good morning. You guys good? Anybody good? Anybody not good? It's like a bear out there. Okay, we're going to talk, as we talked last week, kind of depression. Today we're going to talk about some trauma. Before we do, I just want to give a disclaimer, okay? I need everybody to see this. Here it is. I'm not a professional therapist, right? Now, the reason I tell you that is I love reading books on therapy, neuroscience. I do. I'm just a weirdo. Love it. And one day, my kids were going through something. I said, well, you got to understand with this, and my wife just looked at me. We're in the car, and she said, you're not a psychiatrist. You're not a therapist. Quit acting like you are. I'm like, touche. She's like, you can't just read a couple books and think you've got this locked down. So I want to say that, you guys. Some of you maybe have some really, really heavy, deep stuff. Maybe today's going to kind of bring that up. And for you, I'm just saying, literally, from the bottom of my heart, we want to help you. We want to help you take steps. That might be a few of the P's. Maybe you need some more professional help. Maybe you need a prescription. I don't know. But we want to help you kind of go along with that. But today, since it's kind of heavy, I'm not even going to open with a joke. I just want to literally kind of get into and share as we talk about mental health help in 3 easy steps. Impossible, right? Maybe so. But before we get started, I want to share with you a story that I find so fascinating. This guy, his name is Viktor Frankl. I want to talk about 2 people in the past that suffered major trauma. This was Viktor's trauma. He was obviously Jewish during the Holocaust period. He spent 3 years in 4 different concentration camps. His father died of starvation in the first camp. He basically watched that. Mother and brother were killed in gas chambers in the second one. And to top it all off in such a tragic, horrific kind of moment, he also watched his wife die of disease and probably malnutrition and some of the other things in the third concentration camp. Now, can we just agree today, is that traumatic? Is that not, and I'm not comparing trauma. That's another thing the Bible Belt we like to do. We like to compare, oh, well, your story isn't half as bad as mine. The goal isn't to compare trauma. I'm just saying, as we think about this guy, and we're going to come full circle at the very end, that's traumatic, right? And the guy we're about to talk about in the Bible wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. And guess what? His life was very traumatic. They faced trauma. So I just want to give you real quick kind of a summary, okay? This basically come from a science book. But either way, I'll talk about the 3 types of trauma just so you can see this real quick. And this next one. Okay? If you talk to people, read this. There's acute, so that's one-time event. Some of you here, you're in college. Maybe it was sexual assault. Something happened, horrific, one time. But it's really, and this is the thing I want to say to you just so you get today before we get rolling with some stuff that Paul said. And this is really important. Trauma isn't the event. Trauma is way more about the response, the effects. Okay, we all think trauma is like, oh yeah, that happened, that's bad. No, what trauma is the ongoing kind of response and effects of something probably really horrible, horrific, or tragic that happened. But we all know there's people that just had a one time. You know, I was 12. A friend of mine talks about literally waking up and getting a phone call and finding out like literally some of his family had been in an accident. It's trauma. Like he still talks about it now. You can tell that's deeply affected him and his life of just uncertainty, fear, right? Maybe some of you are in a car wreck. My mother-in-law was in a car wreck, and I remember her, like you can tell when you're driving, she's like, oh, so slow down, right? Traumatic events can affect that. The second one would be chronic, and this would be for some of you maybe in this room, some people watching online, maybe you were literally bullied from like 2nd grade to 12th grade. Just had horrific moments that just kept coming back. Maybe you're in a home. Maybe for a lot of you, it was like racism, and you literally felt it your whole life, right? That's very traumatic, and it's just ongoing, and you had to just keep facing those terrible moments. And then the last one is, for a lot of us, is just complex. That might be a situation where you lived in a home with someone who had addictions, whether it was substance abuse, physical, like there's a lot of abuse. Maybe some of you, God forbid, but some of you live that, right? And it's just so complex, or you don't even realize some of that trauma. So let me give you a confession, okay? As we kind of get into this and the stuff that Paul says, I want you to really hear my heart here. This has been kind of an ongoing process for me because I grew up in Arabia, Ohio, in the middle of nowhere, 3 brothers, all just knuckleheads. And I grew up in a time, I'm 44, I grew up in kind of, those of you who are around my age, so if you're like in that, I would say maybe late 30s to about mid 40s, maybe late 40s, you grew up in a weird time because you grew up literally like all of the older people in here who are way older than me. I grew up like it was the 50s. Go get on your bike. When do you come home? Don't come home, right? Just don't bother your mom. Just stay out, right? That's a lot of us like you guys, like, yeah, you didn't think about stuff. You're just kids going nuts outside. There's no technology. But then I get to high school and I'm talking to a friend. He's like, have you heard of electronic mail? Dude, I don't even know what you're talking about, right? He's talking about email. So I'm kind of that weird, like I kind of get it. You younger people than me, you really get it. Like you start talking about Snap and all your stuff. I don't get that. But I get some technology. So I'm like in 2 different worlds. But here's my confession. I grew up in a home, boys, a dad, where I heard constantly, this is what I heard all the time. Hey, Dad, I think I broke my arm. We'll rub some dirt on it, right? Some of you grew up that way. I'm not saying it's even healthy. It's probably not healthy. But some of you in here, you grew up with that. Like that's just like, you'll get over it. Well, my arm's hanging, right? A bone's sticking out. I'm not sure I'm going to get over this, Dad. He's like, you'll be fine, right? Kind of grew up that way. Some of you here have that. The reason I tell you that, though, is because I kind of grew up with the mentality of just get over it. Now, this is a sad confession. If someone came to me in this room and they're like, I'm really struggling at least 5-6 years ago, and I'm having anxiety and depression and I'm not getting it, I would have been like, yeah. But deep inside, I'm like, just get over it, right? Just get over it. Well, as I've progressed and then had some of my own personal struggles in the last few years, I've realized you don't get over it. You don't. That's not a good answer. You just don't. You have to kind of process and work through this stuff. I've had to do that in my own life. So we talked about, obviously, Viktor Frankl. Now I want to talk about, in the Bible, a guy who wrote literally 2/3 of the New Testament. His name was Paul. I want you to see his trauma. Let's talk about his trauma real quick. This is so crazy. He was literally on a rampage to torture and murder Christians. He hated them, followers of the way. Hated them, trying to kill them. So he is literally on a rampage, just killing. One day, Damascus Road, he's riding by, and it says a light knocked him off of his horse. Now, I don't know how smart you guys are, but I learned in 5th grade science that when a light knocks you off of something, it's called lightning. So he may have been struck by lightning. He becomes blind. Jesus is like, Paul, why are you coming against me? He didn't have that, Paul, I love you, you're my friend. It's like, Paul, why are you persecuting my people? Why are you persecuting me? Kind of harsh. And he's blind. Jesus doesn't also say, hey, but it's okay, in 3 days you're going to be. So he literally gets possibly struck by lightning. He's blind and doesn't know if he's going to be blind for the rest of his life. That's traumatic, right? Became blind after converting, was told would suffer greatly. Jesus himself said, you will suffer greatly for me. I don't know about you guys. I don't want to hear Jesus really tell me that, right? You will be blessed beyond measure by me. Thank you, Jesus. That's the plan that I want. And he experienced extreme hardship consistently throughout his life. Now, just to put it in perspective, this is literally what Paul says. We're going to be in 2 Corinthians today, and I'm going to just bump just a little bit down in the letter and then come back to chapter 1. Paul is arguing with the people because they're like, we don't think you're a true apostle or a true leader of the church. You weren't with the original group, da-da-da-da-da. And Paul's getting kind of ticked. So most of this letter is him trying to prove that how he suffered for God and how God has called him to be one of these people. Listen to what he says. This is in 2 Corinthians 11, verse 23. He says, are they servants of Christ? Now, he's about to give you his list of the way Jesus actually caused trauma, or not, we'll say caused allowed trauma in his life. Am I out of my mind to talk this way? I am more. I have worked much harder. He flexes a little bit. Been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, and been exposed to death again and again. 5 times I've received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. Some of you, if you're Bible people, you've heard that, right? Well, the reason for that, in the Roman government, if you had 39 lashes, anything under 40, they literally beat you pretty severely. But if you died 39 or below, they're like, that's okay, he was just being punished. And everyone was good. If I'm a soldier, I'm like, it was 39, he died. Okay, you're good. But if you did 40 or more in their government, the rule was that's murder. So he's like, look, how many times they beat me within an inch of my life, leaving me to die. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was pelted with stones. 3 times I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I've been constantly on the move. Now he really starts to get into it. I've been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles. You guys getting the picture? I've been in a lot of danger. In danger in the city. I left the city. In danger in the country. In danger at sea. In danger from false believers. And he says, I have labored and toiled and often gone without sleep. I've known hunger and thirst and have gone without food. I've been cold and naked. Besides everything else, I face daily the pressure of my concern for all these churches. Is that not traumatic? Like, I never really realized this until this week, really getting into this. Paul had some major traumatic events in his life. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, I think we're going to see some really kind of helpful stuff in our own life of how do we move forward with trauma? How do we really kind of work this out in a biblical sense? And I think this is very helpful. So I just want to give you just a couple things that we can do. Okay, so I know a lot of you in here have faced horrific things. Here's the worst thing. Some of you have faced horrific things here, and you didn't do anything. You're completely innocent. You did nothing wrong. Someone else didn't do anything wrong, and it still happened. Horrible, horrific. What do? First is this. We pursue purpose in our pain. Now, I'm going to level with some of you in here because I know you're dealing with some really heavy stuff right now. And I want you to hear me, please, if nothing else. Christians are the worst at this. Someone's struggling, they're like, well, God's still good, right? And we feel like we're helping people, but we're not. It's not helpful. It's actually more hurtful. Some of you in here can't hear this right now. You can't. The wound is still it's just too much. And that's okay. It's okay for you. If you're watching online, that's okay. And I mean that. It's okay. It might take a lot more time for you to even get to this place, but I want to give you the truth about God. There's always purpose. He can always bring about purpose in our pain. He can. Look what Paul says in verse 3. He says, all praise to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, God our merciful Father and source of all our comfort. He comforts us in all troubles. Why? We've been in a lot of bad stuff, guys, but every time we've learned that God comforts us in everything. Why? So that we can comfort others. When they are troubled, we'll be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. So what's he saying here? He's saying, literally, I realize everything I'm going through, God can always use. There's always purpose in all of our pain in this room. There's always purpose. I've watched my son, who many of you know, born completely deaf, and one of the coolest things to me, I can think about 3 or 4 younger people. They either have some type of disability, have something to do with hearing loss, and I watch them, and they gravitate to him. They gravitate to him. No one else, it doesn't matter. I've been at the ball field and watched these kids. They will beeline to my son. Why? My son's went through a lot of painful experiences. He's had to battle a lot in his life. Why do they beeline to him? Because there's something about that connection. They know. Even as little guys, they know. There's something. There can always be purpose in our pain. Second one, real fast. We press into God with our pain. Now, this is something that if you grew up in the Bible Belt, people are like, you don't do this. Don't be honest with God. Really? I thought the Bible said, cast all your cares on me. Cast them. What's that mean? Be brutally honest with me. God, I'm struggling. I don't know why this is happening. I don't know why you're allowing this. If you don't process it, to really process it, you have to acknowledge it. And I think a lot of people just like, I'm just going to forget it. I'm going to act like it didn't happen. That's not how it works. And I hate that. I wish I could ignore the junk in my life, but we can't. We press into God's our pain. Look what he says in verse 8. We think you ought to know, dear brothers and sisters, about the trouble we went through in the province of Asia. We were crushed and overwhelmed beyond our ability to endure, and we thought we would never live through it. In fact, we expected to die. But as a result, we stopped relying on ourselves and learned to rely on God who raises the dead. What's Paul doing? He's like, I had to press into God. Like, I don't get this, God. We are really, literally struggling. And God taught us what it meant in that moment to trust him in some of the darkest moments. Some of you here in dark moments. Matter of fact, a little bit later in the letter, Paul talks about he had a thorn in his side. Anyone in here, what he's saying is that he doesn't even say what it is. People guess all the time, doesn't matter. But he said, I have this thing I'm begging God to get rid of, and he won't. Anyone in here have a thorn? If you're watching online, type thorn. Anyone have a thorn? Nobody? You guys' lives are awesome. I love this. You have no struggles whatsoever. Some of you are like, no, my thorn is sitting beside me, and I can't. Thorn, right? No. But Paul said thorn. Look what he says just a little bit later in this letter. He said, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But God said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I'm weak, then I am strong. See, what Paul's doing is he said, I had to press into God and be very honest about what I'm going through. And in that, God started speaking to me. And God started showing me not only there's purpose, but literally, he helped me to acknowledge the pain. And then the last one, super fast. Okay? Here's what I see so much in people's lives. We seek connection over protection from pain. Now, let me share something with you that fascinates me. I have watched people struggle internally. I've watched them struggle in their marriage. I've watched people struggle in a lot of different things. And the majority of the time, you know what they do? They start pushing people. People, especially who love them, they start pushing them away. There's something built into us, maybe the enemy, that just says, when I'm struggling, I just want to isolate myself. That's literally the worst thing any of us can do. You will never heal in isolation, only in community. Let me say that again. You will never heal in isolation. None of us. It just doesn't work. We have to have community. Last one, look at verse 11. He says, and you're helping us by praying for us. Then many people will give thanks because God has graciously answered so many prayers for our safety. You're helping us. You're telling us, and we're sharing the burden with you, and you're coming back to us and saying, man, I don't even know how to help you, but I'm praying for you. Man, I know it's tough, but we're with you. I think about you often. He said, you guys are literally helping me because he just had community. So, to kind of come full circle this morning, real quick. So I talk about, you have Viktor Frankl, this Jewish man who suffered horrific things. You have Paul, I think I can make, hopefully an argument today, maybe you didn't feel it, suffered some horrible things. Both these people experienced trauma. What's interesting to me is Paul just basically said, I need to learn to pursue purpose in my pain. I need to press into God with my pain, and I have to seek connection over literally kind of ignoring or isolating myself with my pain. So, what happens? Go full circle, come back to Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl writes a book. He actually survives. Comes out of the Holocaust, comes out of the prison camps. And he writes this book, and he has this concept of how to help people because he noticed, and this is what's so fascinating to me, he writes in some different places that he noticed some people, when it got so dark, they just folded. They just folded. But he said there was something weird because I watched other people, they didn't. It's almost like they had a greater purpose, even in the lowest moments of their life. They understood there was purpose in this. And he said this. He said, I literally watched some men knowing they may have hours left to live, hungry, tired, tortured. And I watched them take the little bit of bread they have and give it to someone else who was too weak to even get up. And he said, in that moment, I realized there is a great, even as horrible as this whole thing is, there's purpose in realizing there's something about inside of us, there's something God designed that just says we were wired to still look out for each other. We are wired to have purpose and meaning, even in our darkest moments. That's what Paul is saying. So what happens? He's writing this book. There's a hospital female hospital, struggling with a lot of suicides. It's rampant. They can't control it. These people have been through such traumatic events. They literally cannot get over that. He comes in, and in a very short time, almost eliminates suicide completely. Now, the reason I'm sharing that with you is he had a 3-step process. And I don't want to simplify anything, but he walked in, he's like, this is all we can do. He had a 3-step process and literally almost eradicated these people, or at least helped them move past suicide, harming themselves. So what was that? The reason I'm sharing it with you because I think it fits so much into what Paul simply said. What was his 3 steps? It was real simple. He told every patient, every person in there, you need to have a project. You've got to have something you do that benefits others or prevents someone else from suffering. Now, here's the best part of that. He didn't care what it was. He later on said, I'd be talking to him and act like I was really into, oh, yeah, that's a great, I want to make this painting. I've always wanted to make the world a more beautiful place, so I want to paint a picture of happiness because things have been so dark. Oh, that's great, it's great. And then he walk away and he's like, I don't care what it is. And that kind of genius, he's like, I don't care what your project is. It just has to foundationally be something that benefits others or prevents their suffering. What's that mean for us? What did Paul say? He said, there's purpose in our pain. We got to realize this. There's a bigger meaning. I can use what I have to prevent other people. Here's the second part. He said, have a redemptive perspective on your own suffering. What's that? What's that mean? He said, if you just think everything's just, oh, well, it's the end, and I don't know, and I'm scared to death, life's going to throw me another curveball. He's like, the people I watch that kind of get peace in this, realize there's always a bigger plan in everything, even in the lowest, darkest moments of my life and your life. And he said, I needed them to know that. I need us to press into God, like Paul said in verses 8 and 9. And then the last thing, he said, all these people, they have to have a community of close friends who love them unconditionally. People they can be honest with. People that they can tell about what they've been through and why they're struggling. Well, what did Paul say? He said, we're going to seek connection over protection from pain. Now why did I share that with you guys? Because it fascinates me. One, I think it's very similar to the stuff Paul's saying. But two, that isn't super complicated, but it kind of tells me, if you think back to Epic Life, there's this up and out process of our lives. This up with God, realizing that God, I realize you're always working. You're doing something. Every aspect of my life. What do we talk about in? I've got to have a community of people. We can do life together. And then what's the last one? Out. I've got to have a purpose, and I've got to understand all of you in here. And if nothing else, you've probably fallen asleep. I don't blame you. Let me wake you up for 1 second. If nothing else, hear this before we walk out, okay? Here it is. Every one of you in here, I believe this with every fiber of my being. Every one of you. I don't care what you've been through. I don't care where you're at right now. I don't care what your life story is. I don't care if you feel like you're fading or you're farther away from God than you've ever been. If you're watching online, hear this. I believe wholeheartedly God designed you long before you were ever even thought of. He knew. He designed you on purpose, for a purpose. And until we realize our lives are made to be bigger than just us. So what you tell me, Trey, I find purpose and everything goes great? It didn't for Paul. It didn't for Jesus. Jesus lived a perfect life. You know what happened? Religious people killed him, right? Church people killed Jesus. Sometimes when I'm facing struggles, I'm just like, well, church people killed Jesus. Maybe that's the role here. But it's not always good. That's my point to all of you. Like, it's not that life's perfect. It's just understanding I need to have a project. I need to be doing something that makes the world a better place. And I also need to realize, even in my lowest moments, God is working. He is. Please hear that. And you need people. You need people. I want to close this morning with a picture of a C3er. I think she's in this service, so I'll try not to embarrass her too much. But this is Sherry Smith. Okay, I don't know her dog's name. Anyone know the dog's name? Man, you guys know Sherry. People know Sherry's dog around here. That's Brody. Did you say Brody? Yeah. They're not going to let me slip on that. So this is Sherry and Brody. Okay, Sherry's married to Randy. Randy helps out around there. Awesome family, awesome kids, awesome, in-laws, awesome grandkids, awesome, like many of you here. But here's why I wanted to bring up Sherry, because I've watched Sherry from getting baptized so many years ago here, kind of in the early stages until now. And if you are just kind of coming in late in the game or you just met Sherry's an awesome, their family's awesome. You need to meet them. You'll love them. But the thing I would say to you about Sherry is when I look at literally from the day she got baptized until where she's at now, it's a miracle. It's amazing. It's amazing how God has changed her life. It's a miracle, all the things. She's part of different groups, helping now. Started some with Dinner Church. There's a women's recovery kind of table that she's since joined. But the reason I wanted to share Sherry, because I thought of her while I was working on this week, is because Sherry kind of reminds me of Paul in a way. I think she could tell you guys, here's the story, okay? We're going to have some tough, dark moments. All of us in here, we're going to have some tough, dark moments. But on the other side of it, when you look back, you realize God did have a plan. God can even take my terrible decisions. God can take the mistakes I make and you make and still work them out for good. That's the good news of the gospel. Sherry also has learned, though, that her role is in helping others. That's what she's really living. She texted me this week because I was asking for permission, and she said, I'm not going to lie to you, Trent, it's been hard. My life might be harder at times, trying to help others. But I finally feel like I'm really living. What are we trying to say here? God will not change your past. Not that he can't, he just doesn't. God doesn't change your past, but God will heal your pain. God will use you for a greater purpose. And I hope for some of you here, if nothing else, when I think we start to spiral and get really south is when we really go down a dark trail, is when we forget that every one of you in this room were created by God, with a purpose, for a purpose. All of you in here. And what would happen if all of us left here today and said, what's my project? Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's in your home. Maybe you're a stay-at-home mom. Maybe it's in your neighborhood. You see needs. Maybe, I don't know. It can be varied for all of us. But what if you said, I realize now I need to have a project, a plan that makes things better around me. I'm going to eliminate some suffering. Or I'm going to make this little area a little brighter because I've been there. I truly believe Frankel was onto something. He realized in that point people are like, now I have purpose. Now I realize even all the terrible stuff I've been through, God's had a plan. And last but not least, but you got to have some people around you that you can talk to, that you can confide in, that you can say, dude, I've been praying to God, I'm struggling, but I need people to tell I'm struggling too. And by those simple three things, he literally watched a horrific situation that people thought there was no cure for change. Why? Because I think he understood what Paul was saying. So here's what I'd like to do, if you would. If you guys would, let's just pray for just a moment. I'm so glad you guys are here, so thankful for each and every one of you. And I mean that. And I pray, some of you in here, let's just be real honest right now. Some of you in this room right now, life is good. In the words of Nacho Libre, life is good, really good. And you know what? I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful you're in such a good season of your life. That's awesome. We celebrate. Some of you in here are trying to kind of be on the back end of coming through some tough stuff and trying to figure some things out. And some of you right now are literally in the thick middle of some really dark, heavy stuff. And I pray today we can kind of take some wisdom from Paul and realize God is not going to change our past. God's not going to fix something that's happened. But God will heal our pain. And God will also make us stronger as we come out of it and more like him. That's what I'm praying for you. God, I pray this morning before we walk out of these doors, just heartbroken, God, for people in this room who are hurting so much. And I pray today that you would help them, kind of as we recap Paul and as he explained his suffering, help them to see that we have to understand there's always purpose in our pain. There's some people in this room right now that just aren't ready for that. And that's okay, God, but I pray they realize Nothing is wasted with God. Secondly, I pray that you would remind us. You say, cast all your cares, all the doubts, all the things I'm struggling with. I cast them on you. Why? Because you care for me and my soul. Pray for some people in here to maybe if they've been trying to bottle it up or ignore it, that today they could just be honest with you and explain why they're struggling so much. And God, help people in this room to realize we need community. God, I pray for some people, they would walk out of here, and as they walk into the lobby, they can scan for the hub and click on the mental health help link. We just want to give them some resources. We want to help kind of guide them along, be in contact, help with community. But more than anything, God, I pray that everyone in this room would walk out here realizing there is hope. There's always hope with you. Your son's on the cross. He takes his last breath. It's dark and everything seems lost. But then, 3 days later, he comes back, proving to us that the darkest things in the world, even death, the gospel can fix. Thank you for that amazing gift, Jesus. Thank you that we can have hope even in our darkest days. Help us today to walk out of here a little lighter, a little freer, and to take some steps to start living in the way you have designed us to live. We ask these things in your name, and amen. Guys, have an amazing week. If I'll be up here a little bit. If someone needs to talk, whatever, we want to pray for you, be with you. But if nothing else, take care. Have a good week. I hope you're good this week. Take care.